Lebanon Board of Education regular meeting for October 21st, 2024. All right, please rise and join me with the Pledge of the Flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3, Mrs. Irvin, roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mrs. Cope?
Here.
Mrs. Dolman?
Here.
Mr. Gliotti?
Here.
Thank you. Item number 4, need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on that? I do see that we added in the board comment section to the answer. Appreciate that. If no questions or comments, we'll do roll call.
Mrs. Dolton?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 5, I need a motion to approve the minutes from September regular meeting, September 16th, 2024.
Moved.
Second.
Any questions on the minutes as presented? If not, we'll do roll call.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 6, communications and reports. A is hearing of the public. We have Mr. Gonzalez here this evening. If you'd like to take the podium and introduce yourself and your address. I remind you that presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Let's see, any resident of Lebanon City School District having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of a meeting. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually, and the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, repetitive, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. You're up.
Juan Gonzalez, 6 Oakwood Avenue, Lebanon, Ohio. I'm here to talk about, this is part 4, the continuing saga of Isaac Seaver, the superintendent, and his corruption gang that continues to think bullying is okay. I guess pursuant to House Bill 276, Ohio school districts, I guess they're required to post the number of reported bullying and harassment incidents throughout their district. It's all kind of making sense because I actually read the number of incidents that had been reported at Lebanon High School, which I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, to be honest. It's 0. At a high school, the number of incidents that are reported at Lebanon was 0. That's pretty funny, Isaac Seaver. I'm going to prove to everybody how you are a liar and a manipulator. It's gonna work. But I don't know if anybody's watched What's Happening Lebanon on Facebook lately. Somebody else started a whole thing on there talking about the bullying, how it's out of hand in Lebanon. Let's see, Annie Orkey's quote, "I actually just took my daughter out of school and switched to homeschooling. She begged. The bullying is bad. It took such a toll on my daughter's mental health." That's one. Kimberly Walker, "This is so crazy. There is currently multiple situations regarding my son being bullied to the point where he was strangled by a child using his book bag straps, and the school failed to say anything until my son told me about it." Another one on there, "My son reported bullying directly to the principal this year, and nothing was done." I don't have enough time to sit here and tell all the comments that are on What's Happening Lebanon. Everybody should definitely take a look at that for sure. But to report it as 0 is comical. You've got to be kidding me. Give me a break. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then here we go right now with the school board. Pretty predictable. Actually, I thought the police would be here at the last school board meeting. Now here they are at the request of the school board. The police are here because when you start uncovering the corruption, they get a little bit nervous. they want to try to silence me. They hope that I'm going to break the law, but that'll never happen. Actually, I'm wondering maybe if Isaac is breaking the law at this point by manipulating these stats that he's putting out. I'm curious to know if somebody can point me in the right direction of the proper authorities to get in touch with to report this. There's got to be some kind of legalities involved in completely corrupting the whole narrative here. I mean, there's got to be. I mean, if you guys want to hear more of these, I got way more than that. I mean, here's another lady from Lebanon, Amanda Huff. They will do absolutely nothing. I have countless emails from last year regarding the bullying that got out of hand. Here's another one. Bullying of my daughter last year reached the point where she received death threats, and no one from the office took the time to talk with me or my child, and no punishment was given to the offender. How many do we need? How many different people do we need to report these incidents before you take it seriously? That's why I want to hold you all accountable, because when somebody gets seriously injured or God forgive, dies or something, I'm going to lay it on all of you right here, because I pointed out this guy. Here's another thing that's funny. So the reporting of all the abuse by Brian Kendall of not only my daughter but many others, that wasn't good enough, right? Well, another coach was recently fired for allegedly using tobacco products. Man, whoever that coach was, you should have been part of the corruption gang, because if you were, you would have been off scot-free, I promise you. But it's okay for Brian Kendall to scream violently in a girl's face in front of hundreds of people, though. That's okay. I'm glad these young girls are here right now. I promise you. And I'm doing it for all you guys, because I'll tell you what, you guys don't deserve to be treated like that ever by any adult or anybody. My daughter is Juliana Gonzalez. I don't know if you know her. She just graduated last year. She didn't deserve, she got beat into a concussion, girls, because this school wouldn't step in. It was filmed, and it was violent, and it was disgusting. And because they wouldn't step in, my daughter got a concussion, and I'm lucky she was able to overcome it, and she's doing the thing she is now. Spread the word. It's not right for a grown man that's paid good money to treat any girl like that. Like I've said before, you know how you get girls to perform? Is pump your confidence. That's how you get girls to perform.
Mr. Gonzalez, we are at 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
I did write down the what's happening in Lebanon, to take note of that. I'm sure Isaac will do the same. And just to be clear, you had every right to come in here and speak, every meeting, right? The policeman being here does not hold you back from speaking.
No, it doesn't hold me back from speaking, Mr. Lane, but here's the thing.
I'm not
I think I've
finished.
conducted myself appropriately,
Right.
and
But
I think it's
want
a
to tell you
foul
something
move.
else, because the last time you were here, you talked about, well, we didn't do an investigation. But I want to let you know, after every one of these meetings, I have softball parents come up to me every time. And the way they describe Coach Kendall is passionate, loud, maybe a little old school, but he loves the game and he cares about his players. That's what I'm hearing directly from parents on the team.
Well, of course, because he's holding them hostage with their kids' lives. They know that.
No.
They know how it is. This is why
These are people that I've known for a very long time, and
Mr. Lane, there's a lot going on right here. These kids know what's going on. All you got to do is talk to them.
Isaac will look into the stuff that you quoted.
He can't be the guy. He is
He'll
the
look into
leader
the
of the corrupt
bullying
gang.
part,
It needs to be a neutral
but
party.
your
Mr.
5
Lane.
minutes is up for tonight. If you're feel free to come back again
Yes, sir,
in a
I will
month.
be back. I'll be back every meeting, and I'll keep coming back with new information every time. It'll be fresh because there's plenty.
That's fine.
The more I dig, the more I uncover, and it all leads back to this man right here. Thank you.
Moving on to Part B, our special guest, Mr. Matt Nolan.
I'll move it along for you.
All right.
I'm in charge of it. Thank you. Matt Nolan, I'm the county auditor. I know everybody. I think everybody knows me. Also a parent of a 6th grader and a 2nd grader at Lebanon. So unfortunately for Isaac, he gets to hear from me more than he would probably like. But so I think this is the 37th time I've given this presentation in the last 3 months. And so you guys have probably heard it in some form or another. I gave it the first time in June to the county commissioners, and most of you know our county commissioners. They're fairly direct people, all 3 of them. They don't really mince words much for you, and they told me it was terrible, boring, they didn't understand it, and that I could sum it all up in one slide. And so this is that one slide. This is what I call the Dave Young slide, because he didn't want to hear the rest of it. This is what he wanted, and it does pretty well sum it up. The good things that are happening in our community. All of us have lived here for a long time, known you all for a long time. Our goal has always been to increase property values. That's something we talk about a ton. That's city council. Like, we want to invest in our communities so people's equity goes up. That's always been the goal. And that's happened. Hasn't happened for all the right reasons. It's happened for some of the right reasons. But the good thing is that for everyone in this room, one of the largest investments that we have, our personal homes, have increased in value dramatically. That's a good thing. That was always the goal. I started in the I was representing the auditor's office in 2008 and 9 when I graduated law school, and we had the opposite. Everybody lost a record amount of equity in their home. That's way worse than where we are right now. So I think we have to take a step back and say this is really good for those of us that are homeowners, which is all of us, and that's a really good thing where we're at. The bad, Ohio's tax system. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Jen, I remember when you first got elected, we sat down and kind of went through the tax rates and looked at all of it. And I got a whole book that I sacrilegiously call the Bible, but it is the center of the tax world for us. And I can go through that with any of you that would want to. But it is messy. It is really difficult. We're going to do a brief scan of it here. But I can tell you right now, no one understands it. I'm the president of the Auditors Association. I'm the head of the Property Tax Committee. I've met with every legislator. They don't understand it. No offense to Isaac and Karen. I don't know that they fully understand it. Nobody understands all the inner working pieces. I got to put myself somewhat in that category. We're going to talk about part of it that I don't fully get. It is an intertangled mess that's really difficult to understand and it's different for everybody. And so what may be the same for Mason is different for Lebanon, is different for Franklin, and so it's very, very complicated. So what is the ugly part, and the part that most people care about, is that everyone in this room, everyone in our community is going to see the largest property tax increase that they've ever seen. And so that's not good. That's not a thing we all want, but it is reality, so we're going to talk about why that is. If anybody has questions, it's much better with questions than my boring speech, but just jump in. So the basics is, how do we determine values, right? The auditor's job is to determine the values, and we do it every 3 years. And 90% of what we do is sales. And I always use Isaac's subdivision because it's a great one to use, Countryside. We look at Countryside, and we see what houses are selling for compared to what we have them valued at. And then we move those houses up. But we also move up all the rest of the houses a similar percentage, because while our houses are our homes, in reality, houses are commodities. They're things that are bought and sold. And we can tell what the value is based on what other similar products are selling for. I call it the Price is Right version of property valuation. I try to get as close as I can get without going over. I never want to go over what a house is worth, but I try to go as close as I can get. Sometimes that's really easy. If you've bought your house recently, I know what it's worth. You just paid that amount. It's harder for somebody that's lived in their house for 20, 30, 40 years. So you'll see some disparities in houses that have been bought recently versus houses that haven't been sold in decades. Those ones are usually a little lower value-wise, even though they look similar. Because of that, I'm trying to get as close as I can get without going over. That's what Ohio law says we have to do. But everything we do is based on sales. Permits, new construction, things like that, we pick that up. But everything we do is based on sales. So we value 110,000 parcels. That's how many there are in Warren County, growing every year, as you know, nowhere more so than in Lebanon schools, right? Very fast growing area, especially in the township, but also with multifamily in the city. So we're seeing that happen all the time. I think my staff does a really good job I've had the same group of appraisers. It's an outside company, but they're based in Warren County. Most of them live in Warren County. They know the county well. And I think they get things right about 99% of the time, which is pretty good. I mean, everybody agrees. We got a 99% in a class. It's good, but it's not perfect. And there's probably 1,100 houses or properties, excuse me, that we've overvalued. And so we're trying to get those people in and make sure we get those corrected, because it definitely happens with our process. But for the most part, I think we value them pretty well. So this is where it gets complicated, right? The valuation part everybody gets. Everybody, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that values are way up. You've seen your neighbors' houses sell. Some of you have bought houses recently. You know things are selling for a lot of money. What's complicated are the levy part of it. And the school district is the biggest part of that. So let's talk about what doesn't get any new money, because that's important. The fire department, $0 new dollars. Developmental disabilities, senior services, libraries, none of them get a single dollar of new revenue as a result of this reevaluation. And if you've heard me talk in the past, or you've heard others present, they talk about something called House Bill 920. You've heard of House Bill 920 or the reduction factor. Every time in history before right now, values went up, rates came down, and everybody's taxes stayed about the same because of House Bill 920. It went into effect in the 70s when they were going through a very similar time as we are now, and it was meant to stop taxes from growing up. So that's why all of those entities get no new money. That's why the school in the past has gotten very little new money when valuations have gone up. That's changed now, and I'll explain why that's changed. In the past, I would have told you, you only get new money from new construction. That's not the case anymore. The school is getting a dramatic increase in revenue as a result of this reevaluation. This is my house. I think I have to bring it up because everybody thinks that I do this because I want to do this. That is not the case. I'm an elected official just like all of you. I do not want to make people angry. That does not help my reelection bids. It does not make my life easier. So my house goes up as much as everybody else's. My taxes go up. My house is about tripled in value since I bought it 10 years ago. And it is... the auditor's office gets $0 new dollars as a result of the reappraisal. It actually costs us about $1 million to do it with all the companies that we hire, all the processes that we go through. So it would be in our interest to not do a reappraisal. So why do we do it? Ohio law says we have to, is the main reason. But two, is the idea in Ohio is that you should be paying taxes based on what your house is worth. A lot of states do it differently. California is the most famous. You buy your house there and you pay taxes on that value, basically, for as long as you own it. And so that's the one extreme. Ohio's kind of the other extreme where we're constantly updating our values and keeping them there. I think that works well. I've studied basically every state that has a significant property tax system. And as far as the value process goes, I think Ohio works really well. I think it doesn't work for the tax process, and we'll talk about that. This is the county map. It's kind of interesting. When we've done these reappraisals in the past, the colors have been a lot different. This one was kind of silly to even do. Almost everybody's colors are about the same. 27.2% is the average increase across the county. A little bit higher in the rural areas, a little bit higher in the poorer areas, Franklin, Little Miami, areas that have usually had more affordable housing. We saw larger increases percentage-wise there because what was a $100,000 house is now selling for $200,000. Whereas in Mason, you see a $500,000 selling for $750,000. It's a 50% increase as opposed to a 100% increase. So percentage-wise, we saw the biggest changes in raw land and in the areas that are traditionally less wealthy that are kind of all rising up. But we saw consistent increases. Almost no one saw less than a 25% increase, which is unusual. In the past, the very high-end subdivisions, the Long Coves, the Rivers Bend, they saw much lower increases. Not this time. They all saw 25% increases as well. This is where it gets ugly, and you don't want to look at it, and it's a lot of numbers, but this is where things are working the way the Ohio legislature wanted them to work. Deerfield Township Mason Schools saw the smallest increase in the county, roughly a 6% increase in their taxes. And if you look through that, and you've got the presentation, you guys can look through it, and I'm happy to go through it in detail, but values go up, and almost every one of the tax rates for the school district, the township, the parks, the library comes down, and people don't see their taxes go up. That's the way the system is supposed to work in Ohio. In 85% of Ohio, it's not working that way anymore. And so if you go to the next one, it's Lebanon's. And this is where $100,000 home in Lebanon, these are the rates. And then you can see that the majority of Lebanon school, city of Lebanon, their rates, their values are going up, but their rates aren't coming down anymore. You've hit what they call the 20 mil floor. And this is a term that no one knew existed except for school treasurers and superintendents. And we've all been talking about it for years. It's coming, and now everybody across the state's hitting it, including Cincinnati Public Schools, biggest school district in the state to hit the floor. But most all rural districts are at the floor, and a large growing number of suburban districts are now hitting the floor. It's basically only the urban districts left that are not at the floor, and that's causing this large increase. You can see on average, and it's pretty consistent across Lebanon schools, a $220 increase per $100,000 in value. And so that's what we're seeing. The average house in Lebanon is just over $300,000. So you're talking basically $700 a year in tax increases. Most of that going to Lebanon schools. About 75% of it is coming to the Lebanon schools as new money to the school district. Again, this is the demonstration. Mason and Kings are the only two districts in the county that are not at the floor, and they work the way that the legislature intended for this process to work, or at least they claim they intended for it to, where values go up, rates come down, and taxes stay about the same. What you see on Lebanon's, where the values and the taxes are going up at about the same lines there, is what you see in every district. I've got this little graphic in all my presentations. All I do is change the name, because it looks the same in Franklin, Carlisle, Little Miami, Clinton, Massey, Wayne, Springboro. They all look the same. And you're going to see this continue because this isn't a blip. There's a lot of people in the legislature saying this is kind of an aberration. We went up 13% 6 years ago, we went up 18% 3 years ago, now we went up 27%. And if we were reevaluated next year, we'd go up another 10%. And so I do think it's going to even out some. We're just going to keep doing this, and you're going to keep seeing this growth. Now, maybe this doesn't all seem complicated. I hope it does, because it is. I think it is. But there's this extra complicating factor, and this is the part that I don't fully grasp, and frankly, I don't know many people that do, is there's about $6 million extra dollars that Lebanon's going to get as a result of being at the floor from the reevaluation, which is a good thing. That's intentional. The idea was that schools would get that extra money. They'd have to go for levies less, and they would continue to get a boost. That was the idea behind the 20 mil floor. That was intentional. However, they've also got, on the flip side, a school funding formula that says when you get more value locally, the state's going to fund you less. And so a portion of that $6 million, I don't know what portion, the state's going to take back. So you're going to get it in through the property tax collection, and then the state's going to say, yeah, but you're not getting as much from us anymore. But that'll be delayed. It'll be a couple years down the road, and what that number is, I don't think anybody can honestly tell you. There's all kinds of software out there that can predict it. It's not the whole $6 million, but it's a percentage of that. Makes Karen's job very difficult to try to honestly tell you what your budgets are going to be, because I don't. Yeah, that's the complicating part. I can tell you to the number what you're going to get in property taxes, how it's going to work. We can be very close. What the state's going to do, we have no idea, and that's what complicates everything. Yeah, so that's where that is.
And Matt, on this slide, just to, if Isaac can go back for a second, just to point out, the reason our just to clarify, the reason our taxes are going up and Masons aren't to the degree, it's because you've got the numbers on there. They're at 36 mil, right? They have passed so much more to collect ahead of time that they're so far above the 20 mil.
That's right. Mason and Kings have passed more levies. They voted on more levies, so they're above the 20 mils. They're coming down. I will tell you, right now, the lowest taxes in the county is Springboro by a pretty good margin. And then Lebanon is generally, Lebanon, Wayne are kind of in that second tier of lower. Mason is third, and then you get into Little Miami, Franklin, and Kings is by far the highest. And Kings and Franklin are going to stay the highest. If I'm fortunate enough to come back here in 5 years and give a presentation in 6 years, Mason will be the lowest taxes in the county, almost no doubt. They have set up, because the system so favors the Masons and Springboros of the world, it is a dramatic benefit to be a commercial-based community, which they are. The issue with that is we invest, we being the state and county, a huge amount in their businesses, which then benefits their school districts. And so their residents pay less as a result. So the system is a little broken in that we want local control. And this I bring up all the time. Everybody in this room, if I asked you privately, you'd say, yeah, we want local control. We don't want Columbus telling us how to run things here in Lebanon schools. And I believe in that. The problem with local control is it's fake, because we send all our money to Mason and to Springboro, and we build interstates. We put a lot of capital investment in these communities that we don't put in the rural areas, but then they get stuck with the same kind of burden. They got to educate the same kids. They got to pay the same costs. So there needs to be a fix in that regard where we can benefit the other school districts. Last I checked, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Mason gets more per funding per student than Lebanon does, which seems a little off to me. I think they get more than almost any. I think Franklin's the highest and Mason's the second highest in the state. And there's all kinds of reasons from back in history and all kinds of things, but the system has some major flaws in it. So I talked about residential. That's the build up. You know, half of you are in CAUV. That's real bad. That's real bad. And I'm happy to do the whole CAUV presentation. Taxes are doubling for those people that have farms. Now, Roy, you do pay way less than everybody else as a percentage. So when you double taxes, you're at a smaller number. It's still a much smaller number. It's actually, your savings are larger. So this is an example I give. This is actually in Clinton, Massey, but it'd be almost identical in Lebanon. So your taxes are at $1,000 in CAUV instead of the $9,000 they would be paying if CAUV didn't exist. The taxes are doubling to $2,200 instead of the $12,000 they would be paying. So it's a massive savings, though I'm not supposed to say it's a savings, but it is. But it's doubling. And so for a lot of farmers, I won't say that. Roy knew this was coming. Most farmers knew this was coming. The people that didn't know this was coming were people that own 15 acres that they lease out to somebody to come hay it. They weren't prepared for this. They're not in the loop on how farm prices are and crop prices are and things like that. So that's where I'm expecting the biggest issues. And I tell those people, and farmers don't like it, they should be charging more rent to their farmer. That's what should be happening. That's where that money should be made up, because their farmers are making more. That's why CAUV's gone up. It's because of how much the traditional farmers are making. So that's CAUV. The other question that I get a lot is business taxes, commercial property. As I said earlier, the best thing you can do for your school district is encourage commercial growth. That's the best thing that a city council and a township can do. You get taxes, you get businesses, you get revenue, and you don't get kids with it. And so the best thing we can do is encourage commercial, non-residential growth. As a part of that, and because I strongly believe that, I've done everything I can to not raise values on commercial properties. However, they've gotten just too low compared to what prices are selling for, comparing to what the cost it is to build a similar building. So we'd end up with big disparities between what properties are selling for and what we have them valued at, and we can't do that. So values on commercial properties did go up on average about 10%. So a lot less than residential properties, but they did go up. Their taxes will go up even less than that because even though their values go up 10%, your emergency levies, your bond levies, substitute levies, all of those come down. So their tax growth increase will be minimal, but it will be a tax increase for the first time in my career on commercial properties. So that's a new thing. We've talked to a number of property owners in Lebanon about it specifically. You guys are one of the only school districts that are also at the commercial floor. Springboro and Lebanon, you're both at, there's a tax rate for residential properties and there's a tax rate for commercial properties. Some places there's huge disparity between the two. In Lebanon, they're both at the floor. They're the same now. So you will see growth in revenue and in taxes for commercial properties. The timing. So we've kind of all been living through this. We sent out notices last month. I got to say, I've been surprised at how few phone calls we've gotten. I was expecting a lot more. I told my staff, no off in October. Everybody's working October. Don't get sick. Come in. We got to get done. We set up a little website where you could go and book an appointment with our appraisal team. If you had questions about your value, it was set up for 3 weeks. The first 2 days were full, and it was a trickle after that. And so I've been a little surprised by that. I'm nervous about it because I think people are going to get their taxes and say they didn't know that this was happening. But I don't know how much more we can do to let people know. I want people to know. I want people to prepare for this. The values are complete now. We're going to send them to the state here at the end of the month. We'll get the rates back. There is a rate calculator on the website that we created. It's very close, I think. So if you put in what your new value is, it's going to tell you very close to what your taxes are going to be. But we won't know the final amount until January, and then we can give everybody what their taxes are. But if you put it in there, it's going to be close. If you disagree with value, again, I know we got some values wrong. 100% guarantee it. And so if you see your value, and what I always ask people to say is, if I sold my property today, would I get this much for it? And if the answer to that is no, please come talk to us. Because I'd much rather you do it. We can't go backwards. So if 2, 3, 4 years from now, you're like, you had my property overvalued. I can't go backwards. I can only go forward. So come talk to us. We'll look at it. Mostly what we've been hearing is you've got my neighbor's property undervalued compared to mine. That is not as big a thing that we can help with. We did have one in Carlisle where we had the whole subdivision off. It was a TIF. It was messy. We messed it up. So it was a couple hundred houses. And so we had only had about 3 neighbors call and say, this just seems too high. And it 100% was. So we changed that whole neighborhood. And so that can definitely happen. We make mistakes. So if you think that our value is off, please let us know, because it could be. So what can be done? I started with this because originally, you guys probably have heard me talk before, I think there are major problems with our property tax system in Ohio. I'm growing to think that I'm in the minority. So maybe we don't want anything to be done. Maybe this works fine. And if that's the case, that makes my life easier. That's fine. I don't think this is how it's supposed to work. But if my constituents and you all do, then I'll, keep my mouth shut. But I think we should be talking to our legislators to find ways. I think we need better ways to help people not see property tax increases at this rate, especially those that are senior citizens and people on fixed incomes. We have a program in Ohio called the Homestead Act. Nobody qualifies for it. You have to make less than $38,000 as a combined family income and be 65 or older or permanently disabled. We have very few applicants. And so I think those numbers should go up so we can get more people on fixed income into it. Another proposal, that's my proposal admittedly, is that I don't think that the school district should be getting this large of an increase unvoted. The idea of the 20 mil floor is that you would get an increase based on inflation. That property values and inflation usually run side by side, and that you would get an inflationary increase. You're getting much higher than inflationary increase without a vote of the people. I don't think that's the way it should work. Not surprisingly, OASBO disagrees with me, and a number of other groups. OASBO's been great to work with. Actually, Katie's been awesome. So we've had a lot of good conversations. And then the other thing is alternative taxes. I really like what the city did, and we're all conservative Republicans, I know the lines, but they put an income tax in place. They increased our income. My taxes went up, and I can almost guarantee, knowing the 5 of you like I do, your taxes net went up. Your income tax was higher than what your property tax decrease was. But it works better. It helped senior citizens that are on fixed incomes. It brought in revenue from different sources. So I think we just have to explore everything. I think everything needs to be on the table of ways that we can best help our community. School district's doing great, but ways that we can continue to do that to help everybody. So that was a lot of talking. What questions can I answer? Concerns that you've heard from people?
Roy whispered over and said, how can he convert to commercial on his property? That's what I was.
I will do that tomorrow. I will do that tomorrow.
Can I see the appraisals for widths?
The width went up 10%. I looked before I came over here. But I guarantee my kids
Mine
have paid more than the tax increase this summer alone. I
appreciate it, man. It's very good information. So it is, I will say, a complicated mess.
So one of the things you encouraged us to know was to know our net. So can you tell us what you think the net is in terms of increase? If it's a 28% increase on property values, what will be the?
$6.2 million increase in net tax revenue, roughly. And so part of yours is confusing, and you guys may have talked about this. There's very large pipelines that run right through Lebanon School District. Rockies Express is the most well-known one. They're liars. The only way you can call them. Rockies Express are liars, and most of the people in the pipeline industry are. And so Rockies Express came through, and if you were around then like I was, they told us they were going to pay all this money in taxes. They had these beautiful charts that showed what they were going to pay. They never intended to pay that amount of money. They immediately appealed their valuation to 50% of what it was valued at. And so for the last 4 years, you've only been collecting 50% because there's a special thing written in the law just for them that they don't have to, if you or I wanted to appeal our value, we'd have to pay the full amount of our taxes, otherwise we get penalized. They don't have to do that. They could pay whatever number they want. They could say 1%, and they'd pay at that. And then the state eventually makes a decision. In this case, they made a decision at like 87%. And so they had to go back all those back years and pay the difference with no penalty. It's basically an interest-free loan to them for years. But that increase now is permanent, at least it's a 30-year agreement. So for the future, we'll get all that new money. So that's part of that $6 million is the Rockies. There are other pipelines that run alongside Rockies, ATEX being the most well-known. They pay $0 in property taxes, not 1 penny. The way the law reads, it's natural gas, coal, oil, or its derivatives. ATEX uses a derivative of natural gas. And so, again, ATEX admitted this in depositions. They said, yeah, we knew what the law said. And everybody interpreted the law before ATEX to be their derivatives, the derivatives of all three, coal, oil, or natural gas. But ATEX's lawyers were very smart, and they knew that wasn't the case. And so they pay $0 because they're a derivative of natural gas rather than of oil. And so I've tried to get that law changed continuously. The treasurer in Springboro and I have worked very hard on that. That would be millions of dollars of new revenue for school districts. That wouldn't cost a business in this community, wouldn't stop that. They pay property taxes in Pennsylvania. They pay property taxes in Indiana. They pay nothing when they go through Ohio. And so there's a lot of things that we could do that would help these school districts, that would help our residents. Sorry, that wasn't $6.2 million at the end of it.
I'm surprised that the energy companies would be corrupt.
I know, it's a shocking thing to hear, right?
Matt, thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you guys for
Thank
everything
you.
you do. We really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Matt.
We love the school district. We love everything you guys are doing. So thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Moving on to C, student board member update, Isaac. It's coming here, hold on. This Isaac?
I know,
Helping
but I'm in
Getting
charge
assist
of,
from the other Isaac?
I'm in charge of, I thought you were talking to me at first. I was like, why?
This is the update for October 2024 at Lebanon High School. First up, we had the College and Career Fair. Sophomores through seniors were able to speak to colleges and other programs at our annual career fair. And thanks to Ms. Turpin for coordinating the event. It's pretty special to have something like this at our high school that a lot of other schools do not have. Next up, we have the National Merit Commended Students. Wes Holdcraft, Vivian Repka, and Bryson Purcell were all named National Merit Commended Students. They placed in the top 50,000 of the country on the PSAT, and they received letters of commendation. Congrats to them. Next up is our marching band. It was an awesome day at the Loveland Marching Band Competition. We won Best Music, Visual, Auxiliary, GE, and First in Class, and we're proud of all their hard work. Next up, we had our first state golfer in LHS history to qualify for the OHSAA State Golf Championships. As a sophomore, she placed 30th out of 72 golfers in the state that qualified. We're excited to see what she can do in the future, and then congrats, Olivia. And then next up, our upcoming playoff action for our sports that already finished their regular season. So October 21st, we have girls soccer versus Lakota West, girls volleyball versus Middletown at Lakota East, and then October 22nd, we have boys soccer at Elder. We wish good luck to all these teams and hope they win those matchups. And then other upcoming events at the school, we have parent-teacher conferences Thursday, October 24th, the High Honors Lunch November 8th on Friday, and NHS inductions on Monday, November 21st.
A couple things to add there. The parent-teacher conferences, high school parents and families probably got an email in the last couple days talking about different presentations by grade level. And so there'll be specific things for freshmen, sophomore, junior, and senior parents at different times that night. So if they want to participate in that, find the Final Forms email. The other thing is we found out we'll be hosting a home playoff football game as well. So we have one more regular season game, but good job so far this season and good luck. I think that's will be not this coming Friday night, but next Friday night. So, anybody have any questions for Isaac?
I have two questions. Did not get the name of the kid that had the interception in the first half of the Walnut Hills game. Who was that?
I don't know.
You don't know him? Could he have been the same kid that was homecoming king?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Research that.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything for him?
Thanks, Isaac. Moving on to board committee reports, student achievement liaison,
Okay, I'm going to say mine for next month.
okay? CAC committee, Mr. Gliotti or Mr. McCutcheon?
We did not have a meeting again this month. We have a meeting next month to go over the new 5-year forecast.
Okay. Legislative liaison,
I have nothing to report because our legislators are not in session.
I do want to make sure I point out to all of you, there has been some information, I think I will try to send it if I haven't done so already. We expect there to be a lot of education-related things in the lame duck session. So before we get back together again, so if you reach out to our 3 legislators that represent us in Columbus, we need to make sure that those things that are happening in the next 2 months, they're not trying to slide through bad legislation at the last minute.
So as I read that, there's a couple, you can get online and see when there are potentially scheduled meetings that the legislature will be in session after the elections, between the elections and between election day and January. So everyone pay attention to that.
Things happen quickly during that time, so.
and Warren County Career Center, I'll add that we met last Thursday. We got introduced to, I think, about 12 new staff members, many of which were in attendance that night. And then the other bulk of the meeting was really around the 5-year strategic plan. So they have finished theirs and started implementation. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. We're close,
We're getting
right?
close to finalizing ours up and putting things out, so. Can I add something? I did not have a superintendent update on the agenda this evening, but I do want to point out and respond publicly to the information shared earlier. House Bill 276, which is a bullying report. It is a requirement that our school district places confirmed cases of bullying and harassment and a public report. And so prior to me coming to the school district, the advice from the attorneys at the time, and it's continued to be the case, is that there's a very specific definition of bullying under state law in Ohio. It has to be one-directional. It has to be something that is persistent and pervasive, and so ongoing and causing a substantial disruption to the child's education. So we have a lot of reports of bullying. We do not report and publish on a document the number of people that make a claim of bullying or the investigations of bullying that we do. We're required, and the reporting of it is very, there's a nuance to it. And I will tell you, at my last district, I managed that as a school district, as the superintendent, because I was the harassment coordinator. And we reported the number of incidents reported and the number of confirmed incidents because of this very reason. Somebody says, I called my kid's being bullied, and you're gonna say there's 0 counts, incidents of it at the high school. Well, first of all, bullying has a very specific definition, A, and B, the legal guidance that our school district received prior to me coming here was very specific on what they were supposed to report. We have discussed this within the last several weeks in my office, because I was aware of the online chatter on the Facebook group page. It was sent to us. And we've discussed how we report and what we report. So I did want to respond to that it is, by definition, very, very narrow. And second of all, how we choose to report things probably will change because of some questions we've had. So that's when we are made aware of things, we investigate, we do discipline. If it's persistent and pervasive, if it happens more than one time, right, then that gets filed away and labeled as bullying. If it happens once, it's an assault, it's a behavior incident, it's a lot of things. Doesn't mean that it's not, problematic. Just doesn't mean it meets the definition and threshold in the state of Ohio for what bullying is. So I wanted-
Do we feel comfortable with the level of discipline being dispensed when those incidents happen?
If there's physical, it is an automatic out-of-school suspension. It is also progressive discipline. So somebody is being mean to somebody at school, right, and the childhood bully on the playground type of thing. The discipline is progressive in the sense, because it's defined in law to be progressive. We don't jump to expulsion on the first incidence of somebody unless it is bad enough that we make that jump. So I feel confident in how we are handling school discipline, that if it is physical, if there is an assault or something that takes place, it is an automatic suspension, and in most situations, lengthy enough that they're possibly being considered for, coming to the expulsion table. If it's egregious, like some of the examples that he gave. The second thing is that we cannot discuss student discipline with anybody other than the parent of the child that's being disciplined. So federal education privacy rights prevent us from saying to you what discipline we issued to another student that is not yours. And so in many of these situations, parents are concerned saying, well, you didn't even tell me what you did. I can't. Doesn't mean we didn't do anything. Just means that we are not at liberty under violation of federal law to discuss the discipline of other children. Sometimes we say things like, your child may not see them at school for a few days. Or when your child returns to school, this may not be a situation they have to deal with for a few days. But I can't say to them, we suspended the kid for 5 days because that would be a violation of law. So I did want to address that because I think it's, I think it would be inappropriate for us to leave that out there as something that I didn't respond to, so.
Isaac, the timeline on the new reporting, you think it's 30 days, 60 days, or? is
As
that-
quickly as we have the conversation to switch the reporting on it.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's, we
So
have,
maybe if there's an update for next month, maybe add it to the agenda.
Yes.
Just so we have it.
if we have 2 harassment coordinators in our district that handle bullying, intimidation, and harassment, it's Krista Foley and Brian Dalton. It is not me, right? I'm not involved in those investigations here. I'm not the harassment or bullying or intimidation coordinators. It's Krista Foley and Brian Dalton. It's handled at the building level. And so those, I did want to touch base on that, that situation. So thank you for your time.
All right, moving on to item 7, I need a motion to approve the financial items A through I.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Irvin, monthly reports.
Yes.
So a very quick update here. This is hopefully the last month that you will see the May. Next, well, I guess you'll see it next month to compare to November. So I think one of the common threads here that you're going to see is how far apart our current actuals are from the forecast. As you know, every time that we get together, this forecast shifts just slightly. And by the time we get to the new one, we have some major work to be done. So in this next few weeks, I'll be working on the November forecast and hopefully bring that to you this next meeting. So we've finished our first quarter. We're looking currently at 134 days operating cash, target being 120, anticipated ending at 108, so slightly below. So we've talked about this is our first year that we'll start to see a deficit spend. So I'm very curious now that things have stopped shifting a little bit on the property tax side, how that will impact our forecast, but also expense-wise, again, we'll go into this a little bit, but expense-wise, things are kind of up and down depending on the month. So we'll see how this goes in the next few months. So specifically looking at those, we're 3 months out of the year, so we're looking at 25%. Revenues, we've received about 35%, and as I explained, at this time of the year, we've received half of our property tax. We'll receive the second half later in the new year. And so we're only looking about a variance of 2% in revenues. Pretty close, but still not as close as it was last month. Expenditures, we're way off. So we're looking at about 22%, which great, but that's pretty far under what we normally would see, right? Usually we're about 1 percentage point away from that target. So we've looked, if you look at the report I provided, or your monthly financial report, it's almost every category that is off for some reason. So we've got expenses, we've got our wages, we've got our benefits. So we have had a lot of new hiring. We've had a new open enrollment is occurring right now in this window. So come January, we'll have all the new insurance elections. That will play a factor in how this changes. We had started the new school year, and so we didn't have a lot of purchase services or materials being purchased right then. We've just started the school year, so we see those ramping up on the opposite direction. So everything's kind of just shifting as school starts in this first quarter. Surprisingly enough, last month, the variance was higher than this month. So it is getting closer, but also we know all of these assumptions in the forecast are changing as of the November. So come next month, hopefully we'll have a much closer idea of our projections to know if our actuals are anywhere close to what our projections are coming in at. That's all I had for tonight.
Thank you. Just to read through the other topics, B is amended appropriations, C amended certificate of estimate resources, D is a fund transfer. You're going to tell me it's a standard one, so I'm not going to ask.
Correct.
E is a list of donations. F is approve the revised exempt pay grade and schedule. Any comments on that one?
Name changes on positions. So preschool, we had a coordinator because we hired a preschool coordinator, but under licensing for Step Up to Quality and how it was working, her license was as a principal, not as a coordinator. So in order to make sure that we had the ability to get Step Up to Quality rankings, we had to change the title of her to principal. Nothing else changed besides that. Salary, benefits, nothing else changed. I think the other one on there was, we had, for 6 to 8 years now, we've had two directors of pupil personnel and special services. It's a very complicated and long name. They preferred to change their name to student services because they're running all of the ancillary student services for us. So we changed the name to Directors of Student Service. Again, nothing besides name change.
Okay, thank you. G is approve the revised substitute temporary position salary schedule. H, activity purpose and budget statement.
This is just another high school group that needed to present their budget to you. They hadn't done so yet.
And then I is then and now.
And I'll be honest, I haven't looked at that one yet. So let me look at that one. This is basically what has happened is we've agreed to make the purchase. It was over the $3,000 threshold, so it needed to come to you as
Gotcha.
approval. We had the money, it was already in the budget.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions, A through I? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 8, policies. I need a motion to approve A, approve the technical changes to the compliance officer title in the following policies.
So moved.
Second.
Like I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the discipline reports, we have 2 compliance officers for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. One is Brian Dalton. When his job title changed previously, his name and his job title are listed in all of these policies. Under Ohio law and your board policy, we're allowed to make technical changes as long as it doesn't change the function and form of the policy. What only requires one reading, technical change. We don't bring it back twice. Only thing that's changed in all of these policies is HR director became assistant superintendent.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 9 is public records request. Item 10, other educational. You okay to put these together? You want them separate together? I need a motion to approve items A and B.
So moved.
Flip a coin. Mr. McCutcheon's had a lot of firsts, so he can have the second on this one. A is overnight out-of-state trips. There's a list of 5 of these. Love to see that our kids are getting the opportunities to go elsewhere to increase their learning and to actually a lot of performances on here, which is great. And B is to approve the winter sports handbooks for the 2024-25 school year. Any questions on those? Great. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 11, personnel items. I need a motion to approve A through O.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll read through these. List of retirements. That's A. B is resignations. C is employment pending background checks. D is substitute employment, again, pending background checks. E is a list of change of status. Looks like they're changing on the grid, right, the steps?
Yeah, so we hire folks at the bottom step, so they're hired at, bachelor step 0 or step 1 on a salary schedule. Once we can confirm previous employment and years of experience, then they will do a status change and move to a different
And it
spot.
looks like you have quite a few current staff that finished their masters plus 20. So
A lot of-
congratulate to all of
A
them.
lot of these actually were folks that got their masters plus some, yes.
F, list of supplementals. G, supplemental volunteer coaches. H, board resolution for employment of non-licensed coaches. And I is a list of ever valuable volunteers for the district. J, list of stipends. K, game workers. L, seasonal workers. M, cooperating teacher stipends. N, special education stipends. And O, long-term certified substitute teachers. Anything you want to comment on those? Any of those?
So our teacher contract, letter N, provides that they can get a $800 stipend for, these are for intervention specialists, so doing IEP work, things like that, that happens a lot of times outside of the workday. It's in the teacher contract. They can either take an $800 stipend or have some, a day off or something to work on that. So this is the list of people that have taken that stipend. Letter O at the end, it's the same person listed two different ways. We actually have a teacher who was resigning mid-year because they're getting married and moving out of state. And so we've been able to find their replacement for second semester, but they're going to start and kind of overlap at the beginning. So they'll be paid a sub rate for the first 5 days before Christmas break, meet the kids, be there with the teacher before the teacher transitions, and then we'll come back at bachelor step 0 following Christmas break. So we were fortunate to find a licensed teacher to be able to do that. If anybody else has any questions, let me know. If not, I think that's the only thing that maybe
We will
deserves-
save our congratulations on her retirement until May for 3 out of the 4, but for Mrs. Langdon, congratulations. She's one of Alexa's teachers back in the day, and she absolutely enjoyed having her, so.
Yeah, we have already received quite a few retirement notices
Yeah.
for next year. We expect that there'll be some significant number of turnover in our staff, and so that will, there'll be a big transition. Those staff members have been here a long time and do a great job for us, so thank them for their service.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on those personnel items? Good. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 12, we will open up the floor to any board comments. Now that we have it, we don't have any tonight.
I have
Do
a
you?
comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think I want to address to the students in the room. First of all, Matt Nolan, our county auditor, one of the best in the state. The guy is brilliant. He actually trains county auditors in the state and all over the country. He's wonderful. The comments by our other guests, I guess this is probably directed to people at home too. This group of girls here, I have known Addison and Andy since they were born. And I've known Avery since shortly after she moved into the district. And what keeps all of us up at night is your safety and your happiness and your education. There's only one person that's keeping me up at night worrying. We take the bullying and how you are treated extremely serious. We're all parents. Some of us are grandparents. And I hope you know that I disagreed with literally everything that man has said for the past 4 months. And for the people at home, your kids are important to all of us. And that's all I had to say.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well said.
Okay. Hearing no other comments tonight, we'll go to item 13. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.